finally get some action at the combine today. Linebackers, edge rushers, defensive linemen going through drills and workouts and measurements, all that good stuff. Potential #1 overall pick Will Anderson, the biggest name participating today. Jalen Carter is back. He has returned to the combine after being booked and released in Alabama. He will not be on the field. We have a couple of our guys sitting and waiting. Ryan Wilson, our draft expert, Josh Pate, our great college insider, host of the Late Kick podcast. Josh, you're kind of looking at this from a unique angle because you're looking at these guys from college, not necessarily projecting to the NFL. As a college guy, who are you most interested in seeing this weekend?
A guy Ryan and I talked about the first conversation we had here, who is Devon Achane. And he's a guy that we got to watch a lot at Texas A&M. Wish I could have seen a lot more of him because I wish I could have seen a lot more offensively out of Texas A&M. And it's always those offenses that struggle at the college level. And then we get to this time of their life cycle in football. And, Ryan, I'm always interested when they come to the combine because I know what I think their potential was. I know what we thought about him coming out of high school. Then you squeeze a little bit, and a little bit came out, but I don't know what in the world he's capable of, even above and beyond. I know everyone's excited to see him run the 40. I'm excited about that, but I also think if you were to go back and watch him at A&M, I'm not about to tell you 5'9", 185 is going to work between the tackles long term, but he is willing to stick his face in the fan a little bit more than that typical height-weight ratio would indicate. So he's a guy, like a lot of other people, I'm excited to see.
Absolutely,
and
he is a track guy through and through. No, I was just going to add that because he is going to be an exciting guy to watch this week, Chris, primarily because this is the field day portion of the pre-draft process, but he's going to run extremely fast. I think he ran a 10.03 wind aided, which gets your attention. It's not official, but it's certainly fast enough. And as Josh noted, his Texas A&M career was an interesting one. He's not a slam dunk first-round type talent, but he is definitely going to go on day 2, and there's going to be a run of running backs that end up going in rounds 2 and 3, and Achane will be at the top of that list.
Let's play a little game, shall we? We have some blind resumes for you, and they're mostly based on college stats. We're going to give you those, and we want you to choose which one you would rather draft just based off the limited information that we're giving you. We're going to start with a couple of quarterbacks. QB1 versus QB2. Very similar, but fellas, QB2 has more passing yards per game over the last 2 seasons. And quite a bit better passing efficiency as well. What do you think?
Josh, you want to go first?
Yeah, so this feels like a game that the contrarian wins.
Right.
So I'm going to take quarterback 1 and have everyone yell at their screen. That makes no sense because I have a feeling QB1 played a little stiffer competition, and I cannot tell by those outlines there who in the world that could be. So I'm going to go QB1 and let you just go with the numbers in QB2.
Right, QB1 and QB2 are clearly the Pete Prisco silhouette, but I'll go with QB2 while Josh takes QB1.
Well, Josh kind of hit it out of the park there. I would say Bryce Young faced stiffer competition in the SEC than C.J. Stroud did in the Big Ten, but those guys very similar. You surprised?
I'm not surprised when you think that for the first time this year, Bama, they didn't have a 700-yard receiver this year. Had a couple over 600 yards, and it's the first time since 2011 they didn't have that. And that's the year where it was 9-6 versus LSU. It was a totally different era for Nick Saban. So with Jahmyr Gibbs being one of their best receivers and he being a running back, I don't think it surprises me all that much, Chris. Plus, I mean, C.J. Stroud, man, when he got on and when Ohio State needed to stretch the game a little bit this year to run up the number, they were fully capable of doing that.
Absolutely. Marvin Harrison Jr., apparently he's a really good football player. And, you know, the knock against C.J. Stroud is he doesn't throw a lot of anticipation. That's because Marvin Harrison Jr. was always open. If you even go back to last season, even though these stats don't cover last season, it was Chris Olave, it was Garrett Wilson, it was Marvin Harrison Jr., and it's a little easier sell to understand why those numbers might be higher. And to Josh's point, Chris, this isn't the same wide receiver group that Tua Tagovailoa and Mac Jones was throwing to. And Bryce Young did a lot of the heavy lifting on his own, and we saw the results, and that's why he's most likely certain to be the first quarterback taken.
Well, let me ask you this, because you guys had differing answers there before you knew who they were. Josh, would you stick with taking Young over Stroud? Ryan, would you stick with Stroud over Young?
Yes, I would. It's probably something I've had my mind made up on for a little while. For example, we had Brian Branch on the set earlier today, and we've asked a lot of these Alabama guys on the defensive side, what's it like going up against Bryce Young? What do you think about folks knocking him because of his height? And certainly they're not paid to make the pick, but the answers they gave us, I think, are indicative of why, if he is the #1 overall quarterback taken, it will be him. And that is, they kept using the word magician. And it's something that really, when you see it happen, and obviously we've watched it for a long time in the college game, it really makes you forget about height. No one's thinking about height when you watch him do things that make you go, wow. It's worth 3/4 of an inch to me, in other words.
That's exactly it. And we haven't yet to talk to any Ohio State defensive players, and we'll get that opportunity. But the ones from Alabama had nothing but glowing things to say about Bryce Young. And at no point did the conversation about height come up until I, of course, mentioned it. And I think the things he's been able to do, you don't see height. Again, if he were in C.J. Stroud's body, we're not having a conversation. C.J. Stroud is a very good player. I've talked to teams that say he will be in the running for QB1, Chris. But at the end of the day, Bryce Young feels like a layup, to use the Steph Curry metaphor that my buddy Rick Spielman likes.
No, for Steph Curry, it's a deep logo three. It's not a lay-in. He's the greatest three-point shooter of all time. That's neither here nor there. Let's go on to our next blank resume. It's once again quarterbacks. QB1 versus QB2. QB1 with more rushing yards, but that's about the only thing QB1 has.
I think this might be a little more obvious, Josh. What do you think?
I want you to go then. If it's obvious to you, I want you to go.
I'm going to take QB1 on the hunch of who I think it is, Chris, based on the upside and with the understanding, if I get this right, that you can't put him on the field right away, Josh.
Pass yards per attempt, the guy with far more pass yards per game, obviously about 2 yards higher there, total TDs, more rush yards per game. So I'm going to go QB2.
Okay, Josh.
And I'm going to, all right, so I'm not going to assume I know who these are, but I'm going to go QB2.
Josh went with Hendon Hooker. Ryan, is that who you thought it was, Anthony Richardson?
I thought it was Anthony Richardson, and I leaned towards him, Chris, because I thought QB2 was going to be the man who we have yet to talk about, Will Levis. Here's the thing, and Josh, you and I talked about this yesterday, about where Hendon Hooker might go, and I like him as an early day 2 pick. Obviously, he had the ACL injury. Obviously, he's 25 years old, but teams that I've spoken with, because of the age, because of the injury, have him going probably more likely day 3. Anthony Richardson, we know what he can do. He's a special talent. He just needs time to grow into that role.
It's so crazy. We were seeing B-roll just now of the Tennessee-Florida game. So vividly remember being up there. It was the first time we went to Knoxville this year. And it's so interesting being in the world of college football, because one of the other first things I asked you when we got in town yesterday was, hey, what's the deal with people thinking what they think about Hendon Hooker? Because I see it from a college perspective, and you guys see the college players coming at you in the NFL. And it's just, he was one of the best watches this year.
Absolutely.
Elevated Tennessee football immediately. And so, listen, if he is a day 3 pick, from the college vantage point, it will make me say, Josh Heupel just did what he did with a day 3 pick at quarterback. So what does it mean when he starts to roll in 5-star quarterbacks off that high school assembly line? Probably a great big trend up mark for Tennessee fans.
All right, let's go to wide receivers now with our blank resumes. Wide receiver 1 is shorter, but he has better stats. We're talking 6 foot even wide receiver 1, 6'4" wide receiver 2.
I'll let you go this time first.
Yeah, you can take the height. I'm going to take wide receiver 1 and understand that if I need to win 50-50 balls with Guy on the left, then I've not done my job surrounding him with proper talent, giving him a good quarterback. So I'm going to take receiver 1 and give the height. I'm going to give the 4 inches, Ryan.
I'll take the 6'4" playmaker. I'm interested to see who wide receiver 1 is. I'll guess Hassel. Is that Jalen Hyatt by any chance?
Wrong.
Not even close.
Oh, wow.
It's our top 2
think,
ranked wide receivers. Ryan went with Quentin Johnson on the blind resume. Josh went with Jordan Addison.
I thought it was really interesting 2 years ago. Addison wins the Biletnikoff at Pitt. And there were a lot of folks who thought that award should have gone elsewhere, maybe to a guy at Ohio State or one of several guys at Ohio State. But I think he went and validated a lot of what people said about him, and people giving him that award thought about him. I still, man, now I just told you like 45 seconds ago you can keep the height. And now that I know who these players are, I want to retract that statement, Christopher. Can I retract the statement?
Interesting. No, we can do the trade because I love both these players, but they obviously bring different things to the field. And Quentin Johnson is such a huge target. And if you're drafting a quarterback, and I think about the Texans here, if they had the second pick and happen to get Bryce Young and then come back at 12, and you get him a big, tall, wide receiver like Quentin Johnson who can make plays at all three levels and has such a huge catch radius, it takes some of the pressure off a quarterback no matter how accurate it was in college. And that's my thought process there. We're at the point in the conversation, Josh, where people are looking for reasons to have players not check all the boxes. And I had a scout tell me a few years ago, talking about Quentin Williams in particular, he said, listen, there doesn't have to be something wrong with the player. Right. And I think with Quentin Johnson, he does a lot of things well, Chris.
All right, let's move on to running backs, blind resumes, putting them to the test here. You guys just pulled the old switcheroo because stats can lie, and even measurements can lie. Running back 1, maybe more of a scat back, I guess. Almost twice as many receiving yards per game. Running back number 2, more of a guy who I guess would appear, you would read into this, that might go between the tackles more, at least gets more handoffs.
I think Chris is throwing us a curveball here. Yeah. I'll let you go.
So, I mean, I can only speak to what we do at Pate State. We run a more pass-centric offense. I really want versatility in the backfield. And so, obviously, this depends on the offense you're drafting the guy into. I'm going to go RB1, or I'm going to go RB left, as we're looking at it on our screen. And I need you to be versatile out of the backfield. That is, I'm not saying it's Jahmyr Gibbs. I'm just saying it's a more Gibbs-ish kind of stat line there on the left.
Right, and we'll see what happens with running back 2. And Chris, if that's Bijan Robinson, I'm quite happy because I know that he can catch more passes than what he was asked to do because he was such a workhorse. But now I'm really interested in who I got here in the draft.
I'm going to let you in on a secret. We thought we were going to put Bijan Robinson up here, but his stats were so much better than everybody else's. We went with Jahmyr Gibbs against A-Chain, who, Josh, you said this is the guy you're most interested to see go through the drills this weekend.
Yeah, that's crazy, though, that A-Chain is the guy that you would classify the same way we just characterized Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yes.
And yet we guessed that was a more between the tackles, ground and pound sort of guy. I mean, how wild is it that we actually mistook him and his numbers for potentially Bijan Robinson? That's pretty wild.
That will be the only time in his life he's confused for being the same size as Bijan, no doubt about it. But he's a special player. Josh talked about him earlier in this segment. But I'll let you talk about Jahmyr Gibbs because he's somehow, in my mind, a little more special.
Well, I think Gibbs, and also the year before him, you're looking at big-time transfers coming in, like J-Mo out of Ohio State to Alabama. Gibbs comes in from Georgia Tech to Alabama. There were times, especially speaking of Bijan Robinson, when they played Texas this year, that's the guy who bailed Alabama out. It's not anyone they recruited. It's the guy they got from Georgia Tech. And it's also, I think, the game that the nation realized, whoa, all these things we heard about him, but we didn't know because we didn't watch Georgia Tech games very often. They're actually right. All the hype that surrounded that guy was right. And it was one of those situations where you may have very well watched him in college and said, he's pretty good at Alabama. If he goes to the right situation in the NFL, that's going to be a guy that's even better in the NFL than he was in college, which is saying something because he was already pretty good in college.
We're giving the guys blind resumes here, just based off basically college stats. We're going to go the last 2 seasons for our next 2 fellas. Edge 1 versus Edge 2. These are numbers over the last couple of seasons. Edge rusher number 1 with more tackles, more pressures. Edge rusher number 2 with more sacks and more forced fumbles, more disruptions.
What do you want, Josh?
I love the pressure rate. I mean, sometimes those total tackles indicate something that it doesn't necessarily lead you. Well, I need to see the pictures. That's what I'm saying, Chris. So I'm going to take the guy on the left. I love the total tackles, but also, I mean, the pressure rate's up there too. So we got forced fumbles on the bottom. That's nice. Are you a forced fumbles guy?
They help.
Yeah, they sure do.
They help. So I'm going to go ahead and guess because I'm just making up the rules this game as I go, Chris. I think Josh has a great fortune to get Will Anderson. I think I got Tyree Wilson, edge rusher 2. I love both these players. Am I even close?
Ryan, you think you know everything, don't you?
Ryan does know everything.
You think that we are just picking the cream of the crop for all these things. He's only thinking like top 5 guys. No,
he also falls in love with everyone.
Our
apparently.
Producer Noah, guys, is going deep into the weeds for guys we might not see on day 1.
So what do you think about B.J. Ojulari, a guy I love his game?
Yeah, it's also, I mean, B.J. Ojulari is a guy at LSU that I thought got covered up a little bit because, number 1, he's in transition. You got a lot of coaching transition down there. And number 2, they went hard in the transfer portal, did LSU. And some people kind of forgot that Ojulari kid's still down there. And you watched him this year, it's a flash guy. He was very much a flash guy. There was probably, if you're watching LSU hardcore, not a string of 6 games he put together where you just said, man, Ojelar's the hottest player in the country right now defensively. Right. But it's also a guy where if you're looking at film and you're looking at a highlight cut up instead of film, jumps off the screen, I think he would very much classify as a guy whose best football is still ahead of him, though.
I agree. We talked to him yesterday as well. I think he's going to be better than his brother who played at Georgia, who was a really good football player in college and is making a career for himself for the Giants. In terms of Andre Carter, we spoke with him yesterday, and he played at Army. He is unlike the other prospects. He's not working out in Texas or in Arizona. He's still having to report for duty, literally, and he's just getting up to speed, Chris, in terms of putting on weight and going through the process that all these young men are going through. So he's going to get stronger. He played wide. He played 7-tech and even some 9 techniques. So he'll, as he gets stronger, move closer to the line of scrimmage. And, again, just like BJ, as Josh mentioned, I think Andre's best football is certainly going to be ahead of him.
Okay, you guys thought that was difficult. Next week, we're going to have you both on. Noah's going to give you blind resumes, and all you're going to get are hand sizes for quarterbacks. You up for that?
Oh, good.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.